In this lesson, we're going to continue on exploring whole body unified force. And remember, first of all, we're working with balanced whole body unified force. That isn't the thing that we necessarily need or will find most useful for martial arts practice in Yiquan or Chinese martial arts more generally. But it absolutely is the thing that's the foundation for the thing that we're going to find useful for martial arts practice. So I mentioned a couple of videos ago, everybody always wants the shortcut, but actually this is the shortcut. And remember that I'm emphasizing this because some of the parameters of the exercise that we're using very much fit into this category of dead standing. But as I've said before, also, dead standing isn't necessarily the terrible thing that it's made out to be. Dead standing can have a lot of benefits in terms of building resilience, building a little bit of muscular strength, but that's not why we need it in this case. The reason we build it in this way is that this is easier. It's the logical model of how we develop the skills that we actually need for practical martial arts use. We take our intent, we provide it with a kind of mould, not mould as in that grows on food that's gone off, but mould as in like a clay mould or something that you make a shape out of. We provide those shapes, those moulds, through our standing postures, and we pour our intent into them. And we begin with balanced whole body unified force. That's the easiest way of doing it. And then once we get that feeling, then we can start moving it, we can start skewing it, or we can start finding the sense of movement within stillness. And that's going to be a lot easier to do if we just find this special kind of feeling that we get with balanced whole body unified force, where you start to feel a little bit like your body's disappearing, particularly if you close your eyes. And if you do get that feeling, which hopefully at this stage people will do if you're able to do the kind of standing that's required for the intermediate level Yiquan, well, let's not call it a course, let's call it an informative discussion. If you are able to do that, if, for example, you are practicing today's exercise along with me, just at a certain point you can just do a little bit of a cheat and just actually try and just skew the posture a little bit. Instead of feeling it as balanced and unified, just try and turn a little bit around. Just push your intent to move your whole body just like a micro movement, or just initiate the sense that you want to turn a little bit around your spinal axis, and you'll feel a very intense feeling, like there's an intense sense of resistance, and that just gives you a clue as to what the gateway is that we're going to move into, of how we're going to create that feeling and then begin to work with it. But absolutely the easiest way to get that and the most effective way to work with it and get the best results in the long run is to start by working on and developing balanced whole body unified force, and that's what we're going to continue doing today. And I'm emphasizing it, nagging even, and particularly irritating as I'm doing this Billie Eyelash very close to the mic kind of presentation, which I hope people don't mind, but I have a lot of problems with my voice, so it really saves my voice to do it like this. Also, I can really think much more carefully about the things that I say, because sometimes I say things that I shouldn't say, I know that. But the reason I'm nagging about it is that people always want to rush ahead. I know everyone's at a different level, and some people are brilliant, some people are geniuses, some people are struggling. That's always the way in any social project. There's a dynamic range of talents. But as Yao Zongzun says, even the people who are really talented, who kind of miss a stage here and there, always end up having to go back and do that stage again. So there's no shortcuts. This is the shortcut. Okay, nag over for that. So what we are going to do today that's a little bit different is to introduce some mental induction. And this is an idea that I've talked about quite a lot in the beginner's course. Remember that we are following the advice given by Confucius, which is that in a holistic system, you have to constantly go back and revisit the basics, not for the sake of just practicing basics over and over again. If you do that, all you'll be good at is basics. Confucius says You've got to understand how things relate to one another. And that's a process of unfolding insight. And that's a key concept that we use in Yiquan. Unfolding rather than learning. And we say that because when you are following an intuitive system, you can't just learn from other people. You take ideas, concepts, things that can massively progress your intuitive development, but you have to unfold the knowledge yourself, experientially, and also through thinking about things yourself. And as Confucius says, going back, revisiting, looking at the basics, see how they interrelate and come to a deeper understanding. In any case, I don't want to talk about mental induction today because in order to go into that deeper level, in order to help people unfold a deeper insight into that, I need to spend more time talking about it than I really want to do in this introduction to the second exercise. I'll do that in the next video, and in this video I'll just describe the kind of mental induction that we're going to use. So the posture that we're going to do today, I haven't done it before, didn't do it in the beginner series. It's a very simple posture. It's somewhere between a kind of lateral, what is sometimes called mysterious zhuang with the fingers pointing forwards, and the holding the ball posture. So our arms are out in front of us, our palms are facing forward, and our fingers are open and pointing upwards. It's a little bit like a dragon posture that you might see in Nanchuan, southern Wushu. So the difference in Nanchuan between tiger is a tiger fist or tiger claw posture is quite tight. The fingers are curled over and the fingers are quite close together, whereas a dragon claw is much more open and the fingers are much more open, and that's the kind of posture that we'll be using today. And I'm describing it because I know some people are visually impaired and can't see the posture clearly. So our palms are pointing out, our fingers are pointing up, broadly speaking, and the fingers are spaced apart from each other. The difference with Nanchuan is there are quite strict requirements when you do something like a dragon form or a tiger form, and also you only hold these postures for very short periods of time, split seconds in most cases. So it's fine in that case to pull the hand right back, and it's part of the aesthetic of Nanchuan that you usually do that. However, if you were to do that for much longer, you would quite rapidly get a cramp and it would hurt and it wouldn't be very good for you, and it would be a very difficult posture to hold. So we don't want to do that. We want to lift our arms back, but they won't be forming a complete 90-degree angle, and we won't be forcing that. We want them just pointing up but relaxed, so it might be about 80 degrees. The angle that feels nice, the angle that feels right, the angle that feels like it's not strained, that's what we want. I'll talk more in the next video about how we need a certain kind of relaxation and a certain way of thinking about our body to be able to work with very subtle movements. But for now, let's just understand that we don't want to force this posture and we don't want to pull the hands right back. In terms of visualization, what we want to do today is begin to understand something a little bit more about mental induction, but understand it first of all on a physical level before we start talking about it as a conceptual construct. So what we're going to do is first of all relax for around about 10 minutes. I say relax, but I mean relax in the posture. It usually takes around about 10 minutes to get the right feeling that we can then start working with. That's not to say that there aren't benefits in holding postures for 5 minutes or even less, but that's a different kind of thing that's being trained. So mindfulness and resilience in a posture is different to the kind of detailed work that we want to do, for example, with micro movement or mental induction. Mental induction requires us to move into a different level of relaxation, which is not easy when we're doing standing because obviously eventually it starts to hurt. Well, that's why we've built up our resilience up to this point. After 10 minutes of relaxation, and I'll put a little sound on the video if you want to follow along with me, a little bell sound or something like that. After 10 minutes, then we start to imagine something. And what we're going to imagine, this is why we're doing this posture. We're going to imagine that we're pushing a boulder, only we're not going to push it first of all. And this is why we're doing this particular kind of zhuang, because as I've mentioned multiple times in the beginner series, our intent is highly trained to link to our hands. So we have a much stronger link between our intent and our hands, and particularly the palms of our hands that are very sensitive. And I think we're going to feel this effect quite strong, and hopefully it's going to be quite interesting for people to experience this. So we visualize an enormous boulder, something that maybe comes up to our shoulder height, and it's very heavy, and it's just there on the ground in front of us, and our hands are on it. So the first feeling we want is just the feeling that we're touching it, just to visualize in our mind the sense that our hands are on it and that we can feel it. So we don't want to bring any tension into our arms by trying to push it or anything like that. We're after a very particular kind of feeling. Anyone can visualize that they're pushing something and bring tension into their arms. That's not what we want. We want a very particular kind of feeling that gets stronger the more you relax, a very contradictory feeling. First of all, just imagine, just visualize that you're touching that boulder, that you can feel its weight, but you're not pushing it. You can feel its solidity is a better way of phrasing it. And remember, the point of these exercises at this stage is to help us understand, work with and improve our balanced whole body unified force. So we don't want to twist around our vertical axis in any way. So we don't want to put more pressure on the left hand or more pressure on the right hand. You can feel a little bit like you're bending at your quad axis, horizontal axis, as the exercise progresses, but don't otherwise skew the posture in any way. Keep your whole posture completely balanced. And it's not a magical mystery tour, so I can say later on we're going to skew it, we're going to twist, and we want to feel the difference in that. But first of all, we need to build some of the essential feelings, essential connectivities in the way that our structure is functioning, or we should have built to some degree that structural integrity so far by following the beginner's course, but we're going to take it onto a different level, and we're going to do it by experiencing this progression again from balanced whole body unified force into unbalanced whole body unified force. And then after a few minutes, the exact time is entirely up to you and how you're feeling, begin to visualize that the boulder is rolling towards you. So you don't push into it, you just brace and take the weight, and you really visualize that maybe you're on a slope or something like that, and the boulder is just starting to roll into you, and you're just having to brace against it and take the weight. And again, keeping that completely balanced posture. And again, being very careful to think about and be mindfully aware of the tension in your structure. So are you just tensing to push against it? If so, you've got to relax, because that's not the feeling that we want. We want a feeling like you could almost rock your hands back and forwards, like I've said before, like you're inside a plaster cast, a whole body plaster cast or something like that. Only we don't want to use any micro movement at all. We just want to feel like we're taking the weight, bracing against the weight of that boulder as it just slightly starts to roll into us. And we need to be very mindful that we're not just tensing up, that we've got the right kind of movement, the right kind of feeling where we relax more, we get a more intense sense of the weight of the boulder. Obviously, it's hard to get a feeling across in words, but when you feel it, when you get it right, you'll know that that's the feeling. How long you do it for is entirely up to you. I do it for around about half an hour. I think that's absolutely the perfect time for intermediate level. I know there's lots of stuff out there on the internet, and I would say take most of that stuff with a pinch of salt and just be aware when you're reading it how much one-upmanship is in that and how unhelpful that is. In China, the saying is 10, 20, 40. At 40 minutes of holding postures in Zhanzhuang, you're at professional level. It doesn't matter what other people say. And also, after 40 minutes, stop counting. It doesn't matter anymore. 40 minutes is absolutely fine. That's the figure that Wang Shanzhai gives. So at this intermediate level, half an hour is absolutely fine, and there will be days when you think, oh, I can do more than this. If half an hour is your average, then even if it's a bit of a struggle to do half an hour, but nevertheless you can do half an hour, if that's your average, then there will be days when you think, I can do more. And certainly with some of the postures that are a little bit easier, you'll be able to do longer. Some days I can't do 10 minutes, and that's absolutely how it should be if you're doing other serious training. We're not machines. We have a dynamic range in terms of our performance. And you also need to understand and feel your own body and know that sometimes when you're standing, you feel like you're going to hurt yourself, and so you shouldn't do it. And I get that because I do a lot of other training as well. So it's inevitable that you're going to have days where you feel like that. And then there's going to be other days where you just have the joy of standing, and you'll know what that is when you feel it. So do the exercise in your own time, or follow along with me in the demonstration if that gives a little bit of inspiration.